First of all, Scott, welcome to Aero-News and, of course, our AEA coverage. Tell us what's new with CiES.
Shortly after Oshkosh last year, we received our TSO for a new software-based fuel sender. And it was something that was in the wings. We'd originally tried out software from a standpoint of incorporation into the fuel sender, and then for reasons of longevity, for reasons of simplicity, we went over and built our units using programmable logic, which look a lot like a microprocessor, but a little simpler, and then they have longer lives because simply going through the FAA TSO process, it's not something you want to repeat too many times. The microprocessor is a little more advanced, but we had customer requests for a lot of different things, and we had developed some interesting technologies that we had found on our trials, on a boat. You basically put a tank on a boat, and we started solving issues with fuel quantity and sloshing and some of the dynamics, and thought, geez, it would be really nice to bring those into aviation. So we developed the unit, I would say a good 10 years ago, and we've been refining it over that time space. In that time space, it's been used on a few military applications that are out there, and also notably on the RDD LX7, which is that re-winged, re-tailed Lancer 4. Much improved airplane, by the way. But one carrying 100 gallons per side. So it gave us an opportunity to have a relatively complex airplane to try things out. We also developed on that aircraft a fuel balancing system that's based off of fuel quantity. So we really had to get our, literal ducks in a row, being Oregonians.
Mind you, high-tech ducks.
The high-tech ducks. Making an announcement about the TSO thing wasn't really productive because, if you don't have the other approvals on the STC, it's sort of a hollow announcement. We'll be announcing for Sun and Fun that we'll have the Piper Malibu taken care of. That's been a particular pain point aircraft for us.
Airplane sorely in need of your services.
Yeah, it's a good airframe. We found that when we put 3 senders in to address the very commonly installed extended range tanks, that we got good coverage for basically sensor overlap in that platform. But we rotated the most outboard sender 90 degrees to its normal travel. There's little subtleties in measuring fuel. If you run the senders fore and aft in the airplane, they tend to be pitch sensitive, and they're also very sensitive to sensor handoff, or where one sensor, is at the bottom or at the top of the tank and the other sender starts to rise due to the dihedral of the aircraft or wing. In the Malibu, what I'm finding, or what I believe to happen, and I'll be able to instrument it here, is that as fuel is burned, it's a long, flexible wing, and the flying dihedral must change as that the fuel weight is unloaded off the wing, which made the hesitation between the outboard sender and the inboard sender quite dramatic. Like 45 minutes, a half an hour, and it doesn't appear like you're burning fuel. Not what a pilot wants to see.
No.
Yeah. Well, they might if they believed that they weren't burning fuel and still traveling along. But it wasn't a great deal from our standpoint. So knowing that if we rotated the sender, we got good response, and also part of the new software is that we actually have pitch compensation. So we're able to actually either dial out that relief in the dihedral, or it's another tool in our toolbox to address the issue. But we can also dial out the pitch sensitivity of the whole system entirely. And it really moves Part 23 fuel quantity into that realm of Part 25. Because all Part 25 systems for Boeing and business jets, have to account for pitch because they're supposed to supply fuel quantity throughout the whole range of flight. And that's what we're getting to. We also have gotten some criticism, but it sort of falls once you put an accelerometer on board. Now I can dial out turbulence. I can dial out those customers who are worried that when they taxi, their fuel is moving. That's a high G maneuver. We all know fuel moves in the air. You can hear it.
Yep.
But we can dial out those anomalies so that what they see from an instrumentation standpoint is much more balanced. And we'll start rolling that out on other platforms, as a premium product for use further on. Currently, we're working with Raisbeck on the King Air. That program is moving along fairly well. We've got some
good market
design reviews, and we're still moving forward with the throttles that we've talked about, which is really another use of that software-driven sensor piece. Because with the software, then I'm able to make comparative evaluations between a dual redundant system. So we're pretty active, and then most recently we moved into a new facility so we can expand. When you move an aviation manufacturing facility, it's not all fun and games.
No, well, moving never is, and upgrading has to be even worse.
Yeah, but it's allowing us to buy more equipment, put more systems in place, have more room for growth. So it's a real positive move for us.
Excellent. So what's the future look like for you folks?
There's been some interesting discussions about water sensors for electric aircraft.
Okay.
There was a little bird, as this industry is filled with, landed on my shoulder and said that EASA, and they believe also the FAA is concerned with electric aircraft landing on water, and that the potential for electrocution or for people trying to save the occupants, that they want a dead shutoff for the battery system, since they want a redundant system. So, we have a very robust technology. We're talking about combining with another sensor and the same technology we use for the throttle to create, a crowbar system that if the electric aircraft were to land in water, that we can preserve the safety of both the occupants and those people set out to rescue them. So that's just something that appeared on our doorstep. We're doing a few more.
Sounds like an interesting problem.
It is.
You don't really consider things on that level until you start having to worry about where these machines are going and what they're going to be doing, and what they're flying over, for that matter, and where they may wind up.
Yeah, it's my engineers embraced the problem. We sat down, came up with some really very credible solutions. So I think that element, and as you know, the popularity of this eVTOL market seems to be very robust. Give us a chance to participate, in another element of it was something we're very familiar with. We're still messing around with some other technologies, trying to expand our product line in fuel, add some additional capabilities related to motion control. We did a flap system for the Stratus jet for Karsten's project.
Cool.
Just as a proof of concept, with envelope protection, where it's very dynamic. The the flaps will start moving, even if you're over speed for the final part of travel, but will only come down progressively as your speed drops.
Okay.
So you get an action that you expect when you move a switch, but you don't get the full effect until you're actually at the speed of which retraction is not structurally damaging to the aircraft or airframe. So there's some fun things that have captured our attention, and we continue to look for new opportunities, or we're more than willing to listen to opportunities that are out there.
Since you're in the fuel game, are you looking at some of the adapting some of your technologies to some of these alternative systems that may go as far afield as hydrogen and the like?
Hydrogen we have not considered. One of the big issue that we see on the horizon is that, as we move to unleaded fuel, we're well positioned. A float-based sensor simply sits on the surface, and density of the fluid makes relatively little implication. But these fuels, with the use of more ring molecules, or aromatics as they're referred to, those are polarized molecules, and so systems like capacitance to measure fuel in aircraft using avgas, like the classic Cessna penny cap systems, or even the Amatec system that they're using on the Piper Malibu, there are significant discrepancies in fuel quantity reporting with the use of those fuels. And so, we're well positioned to be able to address that issue with STCs to replace penny cap, and also, as previously mentioned, on the Piper Malibu. But those are, there's nothing that's going to be left untouched when we do make this transition finally. And there's some good. I just talked to GAMI just recently, and we've been working with them and making sure that we're compatible and that we work effectively, but trying to help them work through these issues so that they're knowledgeable about what pitfalls can befall them. But for all other alternate fuels, we haven't looked at it. We have some side projects to measure some really interesting things, like formic acid for a company doing CO recovery. But hydrogen, that one's sitting out there a little bit far for us.
Well, we're seeing some really interesting permutations utilizing hydrogen-based technologies, and I think that's one that has some serious potential. So it's going to be interesting to see where, when, and how we adapt all of our technologies to utilize it.
Yeah.
So, you're one of these guys that comes up and builds a better mousetrap. This is an industry that kind of looks at new things with a combination of excitement and wariness, and it's kind of difficult sometimes, especially in regards to areas where people don't know you and things of that nature. How did you make inroads? How did you get to the point of being accepted, especially now as an OEM edition and things of that nature?
Yeah, it's I've had an interesting career history, and I think the very interesting formative years of working with some ex-Boeing Vertol people, one of whom was a very good structural engineer, the other one was a very good idea guy. We sat there with the idea guy working on helicopter dynamics, thinking that we could actually build a time machine. So if you if you look at the equations for helicopter motion, on a chalkboard, maybe there was an idea, and I do remember looking at a model helicopter, where we had put a few more degrees of freedom in and hoping that it would disappear, but it sort of opened up the idea of creativity, but getting people to accept the second job I had was working in corporate aircraft making modifications. And I would make modifications on Dassault aircraft look like Dassault modifications. I would make modifications on Bombardier look like Bombardier modifications, or Gulfstream or Cessna. And it was just, the observation of what the lingua franca of that particular engineering organization saw as worthwhile solutions. And it just got me involved in many ways listening to what the customer was asking for and giving it back to them in a manner that was palatable to them. CiES and the GA side, I had worked extensively with the Columbia aircraft that started in Bend as a board engineer. But then I was able to take that dog and pony show to CiES and go, hey, we can do this or we can do that. And since I'm a native Midwesterner, I was able to speak their language as well.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's been fun watching it. It's been fun watching each incremental jump in technology. And we're very much looking forward to the future. We hope you'll keep us up to date. And most important, just keep innovating. This industry needs all of it that we can get, especially in areas which in the past have been so problematic, fuel senders being a big deal. They work, they don't work, we don't know if they're working. It's an interesting game, so I'm glad somebody applied a new path to getting things done right.
Well, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Aero-News Network's coverage of the 67th Annual AEA International Convention and Trade Show, live from Grapevine, Texas, is brought to you in part by the following sponsors: